ITP 120, Eclipse hints. We're going to give you some hints on Eclipse as you go through and do this. You're going to love this IDE once you get used to it. And you want to look, there are some hints at the bottom of those instructions that I gave you for using Eclipse. And you do want to look at those because there are some things that can shortcut things for you. And I'm just going to show you a couple real quick ones here. And I'll probably be doing more movies like this during the semester because I thought that would make it correct. All right, how did Java programs set up? The indentation, the naming, all critical, very, very critical. How you name things, very critical. How you name variables, how you name methods, how you name classes. And I will take off 1 point each time you miss it because I want to make sure you do it the way everybody else does. If you do not indent correctly, I promise you'll never get a job as a Java programmer. And that sounds really weird. Okay, but the reason why I think Sun Microsystems and now Oracle has been so precise about this is because then when you work in teams, everybody's coding the same. Everybody looks the same. Okay, we are making clones, which is great because all the code looks the same. The bad part about it is that you can be replaced because everybody does it the same. But you'll be so good you won't need to get replaced. So that would be a fine thing. All right, so what you want to look at is if you go to here, okay, and this is our task list and video introduction to Mod 1. This code convention here, okay, is more extensive than what you need to actually consider, okay? And I'm not going to be real nasty about that. I put that here because Virginia Tech supplies that in the 5044 class, and so I thought I would put it there. I put one that was simpler here that we're going to look at. And also we're going to talk about correcting errors. So if you look at Java names, okay, and there it is, okay, very strict naming convention, and you're going to be required to follow this. Okay, and the neat thing is, if you follow this, you can look at code and tell immediately if something is a class or a package or a method or a field or whatever. So classes, give classes names that typically have letters and numbers. I tend to not use a lot of numbers. No spaces, okay, when you actually do that. The text will tell you the complete rules. Capitalized every word in the name. So these would be correct. Those would not. Okay, now that's when you first create your class. Packages. Okay, now with packages, this is the rule, and I put it here for you because it is the Oracle rule. That is the one requirement that we are violating because remember, your package name is going to be dwolfmod1, except you're going to use your name instead of mine. First letter, first name. Fields, variables, objects, local variables. We'll see what all those names mean as we go through. Okay, typically just letters and numbers, no spaces. Capitalize every word except the first one. Okay, so that would be correct. That would be correct. That would be correct. That would be correct. You can't put this. If I see this in your code, I'm going to think, ooh, that's a class. Okay, you can't put this in your code because I'm not sure what that is. Okay, so we call this camel case. It kind of looks like a camel's hump, I guess, is that the first word is small, the rest of them are capitalized. If a variable name is all caps, it represents a constant. So that's the only other thing that we would use for naming those. Methods, we don't even know what they are, but name methods just exactly as you do with fields, except they're going to have a set of parentheses after them, and then we know they're methods when you actually do that. So it will look like that. Okay, small letter first, capital every other word. Cannot do that without the parentheses, cannot do that as you go through. Okay, and we'll see things like this, which is kind of interesting, and this is the number format class in the java.text package. And we'll have a lot more of that as we go through when you do that. And so the naming I will be nasty about, sorry about that, but really, I actually had a student that did not get a job interview because their code was not clean. And clean code is readable code when you do that. All right. Now, in Eclipse, you're going to get all these red X's, not you guys, syntax errors, right? Syntax errors, red X's. And that is making a syntax error is something where you violate the actual language itself. It will not even run then. Okay, if you get rid of all the red X's though, it may not still run, but you may run a runtime exception. So again, the terminology, exception, something that gets thrown is a term we use, okay, when the program's running, when you actually do that. And we'll get to a lot more of that as we go through. What happens when you get a red error, okay, and so if I come in here and I type a capital INT, notice it turned black. You hover over this thing, int cannot be resolved to a type. Now, if you're a new programmer, you should say, wow, I don't know what that means as you go through. Okay. And eventually, and these are actually very clear cut syntax error messages. It's just that you have to know the terminology. And so there is a second document out here I really want you to look at. It's called Correcting Errors. And it will tell you, I try to write this. If you want to help me write it better, you can. Okay, but I talk here about syntax errors, runtime errors, logical errors. You need to know the difference between the three. Okay, syntax error is one where you violate the language. A runtime error is when you're running it and it blows up, okay, because of something that when the program is executing, it just couldn't do right. And a logical error is in your math. Okay, I want to take the average of 4 numbers, so I add up the 4 and I add up the 4 values and I multiply by 4. We all know we should divide by 4. Java doesn't know that. And so Java will give you the wrong answer as you go through. And so I have a document out here talking about syntax errors when you actually do that. And I have a little table here that hopefully will help you. These are the most common errors I have seen, okay, certainly when I run mine. And so if you get something in there, okay, and I try to explain what it is. So go through this document. You don't have to go through it, but use it as a reference. If you get an error message, look through here and see if you can figure it out. If not, certainly email me, or that's a great thing to put in Piazza as we go through and do that. All right, so that's correcting errors in there when you do that. All right, next thing in Eclipse, indentation is critical. You've got to have the right indentation. You're doing comments 1 and fixing it, and comments 2 fixing it when you do that. Now, I don't care that this is exactly 5 spots or 6 spots or whatever, but this main method has to be indented from here. These guys have to be indented from public static void main. How do you know those rules? You look at my samples. Okay, my samples, except for this one, which I copied over from there and then kind of destroyed it. You can see that. Okay, there is the package at the edge. Public is at the edge. Okay, this is the signature of the method, that's what they're called, is indented 4 or 5 spaces. All the code inside is indented 4 or 5 spaces. And if you have a loop, which we don't have here, but we'll look at loops eventually. I think there's one in gas mileage. Okay, oopsie. What did I do with that one? Did I change that one? Isn't that funny? I changed my gas mileage. Well, I'll fix it. I meant to change this one, and I end up changing gas mileage. That's pretty funny when you do that. But what should happen is this is a loop. We'll see what a loop is. All of this code should be indented inside the loop as well. All right, now, how can you fix that? Well, you can fix that as you go along. Make sure you do it correctly. But here's your new trick for the day, my friends, is if you take this guy, and I'm in the area here, and I right-click. Oopsie, I didn't get right-clicked. Sorry about that. Anywhere in here, just right-click, source, format. Bingo, look at that. Isn't that pretty? Everything is indented exactly as it should be. Okay, when you go through. Now, sometimes it doesn't work if it's a real squirrely indentation. You have to do some of the things yourself. Okay, but indeed, that will make it look nicer. Once we start adding extra loops in, you'll see that you really want to do that, because if you start coding this loop on the outside here, it's not going to be correct. Control S, don't forget Control S, that's your trick. Control S very often, that's a save. Remember, if you see a little asterisk up here, it hasn't been saved. If I hit Control S, it goes away. And somehow I messed that up because it now has an error when I go through and do that. So if I look at this, it tells me int cannot be resolved to a type. Java is case sensitive, so it doesn't know what int is with a capital I. Notice it's also not purple. Okay, and that gives you an indication something's wrong. If I turn this to a little int, we're doing good. Now, blank lines are great every so often. Don't have to have it too extensive. And again, kind of look at the way I do it when you do that. All right, another trick that I gave you, a couple tricks, and then we're kind of done here, is if you want to print something out, remember the fast way to do it is SYSOUT. I'm holding down the control key and hitting the space bar. Okay, that thing comes up sometimes, I'm not sure why. Okay, because that you're going to be typing so often that we want to be able to do that quickly. Sysmata.println, Sysmata.println. And we'll talk about what that code means later as we go through. All right. Next thing to remember in here is if you want to run something like this guy, you've got to right-click, run as a Java application the first time you do it. There's other ways to do it, but that's the most common one. Okay, when you do that, errors exist. Remember I told you that in our movie, that it's neurotic. It sees an error up here and it says, ooh, there's errors in the project. Well, I don't care because I'm running this program. You can actually put a check mark here and proceed, and then it'll never show up again. I don't do that because I like to show you guys that that's going to happen. So if I hit proceed, okay, there it goes. Now, if I do something and change that and I want to run it again, I can hit that green arrow and it will, if you notice, run the last thing I ran. And so I make a change, Control S to save it, run it. Make a change, Control S to save it, run it. You can actually pull this thing down and it will give you the last things that you ran, which you can also do, okay? Or you can pull from there and do run as, if you have it highlighted here, if it doesn't happen to be in your list. You will get to love Eclipse, I think. All right, so there's your hints for the day. Have a good one. Thanks.